Okay, I was also asked to do a Marion point, and it's very similar to the Katako Creek, so I'm going to do these one after the other. I do have a few notes. The dimensions are basically the same, except the stems are wider and longer. Um, I think the Katako Creek is slightly smaller. Right, so I'm going to make the Marion a little bit bigger. Um, yeah. Let's see. Uh, Another one coming up after this is the Hernando Point from Florida as well. Okay. So Marion, let's see if I can do this without cracking this heat-treated coral. These are found, I think they're centered around Tennessee, right? Yeah, but these are in Florida mainly. Very similar design. I don't even know if it's the same time period. I didn't look that part up. I want to get to these requests without too much time in between. That way I can get a bunch of these requests in. So I'll just do basic research, and then as I have time, I will expand on it in the description if I need to. And I'll make another video with corrections if I get it wrong. And sometimes guys will tune into certain videos because it's their particular local arrowhead point, arrowhead types, right? And then you see, wait, what am I using here? This is a steel nipple. I think it's 3-inch. I don't know how, I forget how they measure these. They measure these between the threads or counting the threads, I forget. You know, they count, I don't know if they count the threads on each side or just measure the in between. I think it's just the in between. And then it's a 3/4 inch. It's just a regular steel cap, right? For you just tuning in. Why do I use this? Because it lasts a good long time and it's very cheap. And I can just go to the hardware store and get it. I don't need to wait, what is it, 3 days for the something to come in on eBay. 30 minutes to get this from the hardware store, and then come home and spend another 10 minutes grinding down these ridges so that I have a nice, you know, nice striking area around the whole thing. It's worth it. And I can adapt to it. Now, is it the perfect material for flint knapping? No, I don't know. Depends on the material. If you're working really, really hard stone, this is pretty good. But if you're working delicate coral, heat treated, it might be better to use copper or antler or aluminum even, or a hammerstone for you, right? If you start using one of these things and it's ruining all of your stone, stop using it and go with something that's not going to ruin all of your stone. I don't know, maybe I adapted these different materials pretty quick, but I prefer to use the cheap stuff. Cheap and good. Mild steel is a pretty good material. Highly underrated. Often maligned. Man, you know, if you don't know what maligned means, it means people talk bad about it. Talking bad about my steel tools. Or they're looking at it like, holy moly, that's not someone to take seriously if he's using one of these things. Nope, nope, nope. Not true napping. Okay. All right, so I'm going to make the Marion point a little bit bigger than this. Hopefully that's right. I didn't get it mixed up. Like I said, I don't spend all that much time doing research. There's two reasons for that. One is because I can't spend a whole lot of time. And number two, I start researching anything and everything. I mean, I'll stay on the computer. I just won't do this particular point. What's related to the Marion? There's a bunch of stuff related to it. Let's go look at those. And then, ooh, that's interesting. And I go off on a tangent and I start researching other stuff. And before I know it, I've already spent 2 hours on the computer when I should have spent, 10 minutes. So if I have to, then I will do further research. Or in the process of reviewing the video, and if I have like some time, I will check up on my narration. See, did I actually say correct stuff in the video, or is it all made up or incorrect? I'll go back and check. Did I guess a lot, or what did I do? Sometimes I get mixed up between different point styles. Right? That's easy to do sometimes. I get mixed up between different materials too. I won't even realize it. I mean, I know the difference, but I'll say the wrong thing without realizing that I'm saying the wrong thing. I know I do that a lot with measurements. I'll look straight at it, and I know it's 3/8, and I'll say 3/16 or something. And I won't even hear myself say 3/16. The mind is a funny thing. I should talk, well, I don't know, let's see. I was thinking about talking about mental templates. Do I work with a mental template when I'm doing this? Yes, most definitely. I work with an idea of what this should look like in the end. And everything is determined by what it should look like. I mean, everything. I got a phone call. I'm going to pause it right here. I'll be right back. Okay, that errand took longer than I thought it would. Where was I? Let's see. I was talking about mental templates. Yeah, the idea you have in your head when you're doing an item that you're napping, when you're working on something. Do I use a mental template? Do I have something like a form in my mind or whatever? It gets into the philosophical aspects of the whole thing. I mean, some people, especially I guess anthropologists, get into the philosophical aspects of what goes through the mind of the person making the artifact. And I've been studying philosophy to try to come up with my own understanding of what goes on when someone, or when I am making a flint knapped piece. And trying to understand how to teach people how to do this in a better way, how to have a better understanding of it so I can teach people how to do it in a better way. And the results of investigating this flint knapping thing in a philosophical way has led me to believe that you can pretty much make the tools do what you want them to do. And you're working off a mental template, and you decide what's going to happen with the stone. The stone doesn't tell you what is going to happen. You have to work within certain parameters, of course, right? But if you can't get the stone to do what you want to do, you're going to go to some other material. For example, you're going to go to bone, right? If all you have to work with is stuff that you cannot manipulate to match your mental template, you're going to go to a different material. You're going to go to a piece of bone or a piece of slate that you can grind into shape, bone that you can grind into shape. It takes longer, but you can get the shape you want. The edges are not going to be as sharp, but you still will get something that'll fit onto the point of an atlatl dart, onto an atlatl dart foreshaft, because that's the weapon system that you have been taught to use, or you've seen used against you, or you've seen other hunters successful at using, you know. And if you can't get the right stone, you'll find something. And if you can't find something else, or if something else just takes you too long, you don't want to use bone, you want to put bone in your food, you want to grind it up and use it in pottery, or you want to do something else with the bone, you go back to stone, you will make that stone do what you want it to do. You'll find a way. Or there'll be a compromise. Yes, there will be a compromise sometimes where you have to sacrifice notches. You may not put notches in your finished work pieces because the stone just won't cooperate. But if you really wanted to put notches in there, you could find a way somehow. You can grind them in. You can use a stone tool against another stone. You can flint knap with other stones, pressure flake with stones. For you that are just tuning in, I do show that I've pressure flaked with perforators and other pieces of stone. You can find a way to get what your mind says you need to have. Now that gets into the philosophical aspects. You can answer questions philosophically that need to be answered, but you have to understand that first, how the mind works and how well humans can manipulate their environments and their materials. We are not always at the mercy of our environment or our tools. We can make things happen the way we want them to happen, the way the mind is saying that it should happen. Some of us are better at mental templates or thought experiments than others. There are people who can imagine doing something with a very close concept of reality. They can do a mind experiment or a thought experiment that mimics reality extremely closely, and it will translate into reality very well. Not everyone can do that. Right? So you do have failures, you do have things you just can't do, but for the most part, a craftsman or someone who is able to produce things through handiwork has a pretty good grasp on what can be done, and is not always preoccupied with thought experiments. They will try different things. They will find the limits of the material, and they will look for materials that will get them to where they need to be. And I've seen anthropological writings that say the opposite, that man adapts and ends up following instead of leading. They follow the environmental challenges. They go with the flow. They take the easy way or the unimaginative way. They don't think outside the box. Nature provides the box, and they must operate within that box. And they have more of a deterministic outlook. Than I think they should have. I think they should be more open to the creativity of the human mind and the autonomy of the human mind, regardless of the environment. Of course, there's going to be a compromise. Yeah, I'm not saying that there isn't. Look, with this material here, this is extremely brittle in a heat-treated state. There's only I can only thin this down so much. I can only work on the edge with so much, with a certain amount of certainty. I am limited, but if I understand the properties well enough, I can get to a shape that looks very similar to this, even though this material is harder to work than this material. And that means I'm not adapting to this. This is adapting to me, or this is going to be following what I want. The material is going to follow what I want. I will find a way to get it to where it's satisfactory in accordance with my mental idea of what it should be like. Right, within reason, right? If your mind is healthy, you know what to expect within reason. Of course, if you're desperate or you're misguided or something's wrong, you're going to fight too much with reality or with the stone. And the feedback you're getting, you're going to let it overwhelm you emotionally. That's when you run into problems. That's not a healthy mindset. But you've got to start with an idea first. I'm guided when I'm doing this. I'm guided by my plan. I plan to make something that looks like this. So everything that I do is adapting to this plan. It's not adapting to this stone. It is in a way adapting to the stone, but I want to get the stone to do what I need it to do. I don't know. I'll find a better way to explain these things once I get better at the philosophical aspects and when I'm not so tired. I wait until the evening to do these so that there's less interruption. Late evenings. It's pretty late tonight. But this particular type is not very complicated, so I just need to find a way to thin it down enough to make it look right. Getting pretty close to the final shape. The thing about coral is it pressure flakes really easily, so I'm not too worried about that part. I'm worried about thinning it without breaking the whole thing. It could snap in half. It's kind of like obsidian in that way. It's a very nice coral. It has a very nice translucency to it. But like many nice materials, it is unpredictable and it can snap at any time. It's like novaculite almost, this particular piece of coral. Very easy to flake, but also very easy to break. So I'm thinking of a good strategy. I've learned that I've got to braid these edges a lot. And in that way I do have to work with the stone, right? So there is a working with the stone, but it's not telling me I can't do the final shape that looks like this. It's not telling me that. It's just telling me I need to adapt in a certain way so that I can get the results I want. That certain way is the skill. This learning curve. This adaptation is the learning curve. What am I learning? I'm learning how to manipulate it. Learning how to manipulate the stone. Probably why humans are such notorious manipulators. Not always for the good, right? That's the problem. Now we can manipulate stone. If we can manipulate stone, we can manipulate people's opinions. We can manipulate people's perceptions. And that also happens in the Flintknapping community. Not only are people manipulating stones, but they're manipulating opinions and strategies, approaches, concepts. Attitudes. I think I talked about it before, but you can get good enough in the Flintknapping to match someone's thought experiment to achieve some sort of objective other than just learning how to do these things. It could be the objective of being the one who is the most correct. Who is the most correct as far as knowing how these things were made? You can manipulate people's perceptions to the extent that they might think that you are the most correct. Or a certain mindset is the most correct mindset, or even the best or the most moral mindset. Morality. I've seen even ethics and morality get involved or get into the Flintknapping. If you don't follow a certain way of Flintknapping, you're not really being moral. And that's pretty trippy. Using an old expression. Okay. That's all manipulation. That's not gaining knowledge. That's manipulating minds. So we all have to be careful about that. And the only way to know how to be careful about that sort of thing is to know the philosophy behind it, and philosophical methods, and even psychology. If we want to get to the truth, first we got to know what are the obstacles to the truth. And be honest about what are the obstacles. And one of the obstacles is the manipulation. No one wants to talk about that, especially people that are doing the manipulating. And if you can dismiss the mind's ability to manipulate, you can pretend the problem doesn't exist. And you can pretend the mind can't manipulate by just saying that the stone is actually dictating to me what it wants to be. It's not dictating to me what it wants to be. I'm working with it, but it's inanimate. It has no autonomy. I'm the autonomous one. I'm the animate one. I determine the result. If not now, on the next one. If not on the next one, then on the next one. Until I get the results that I'm looking for. Within reason, of course. Within the learning curve. And after the compromises. One of the compromises is leaving the steps in. I don't have to remove all of the step fractures. I don't have to get it extremely thin. I don't have to put in bold flakes. I don't have to continue. I can stop right here. That sort of thing. Now, if I stop right here, am I letting the stone beat me? Well, as long as it's within the parameters that I need for it to work, if it's going to be a good projectile point, the stone is not beating me, because it is going to fit on a dart. This is going to be a dart point, and if not, it can be a knife. It can be useful for something. Yes, but if it's not useful for the exact thing you intended, that means the stone's telling you what to do. Well, okay. Maybe this one is telling me what to do, but the next one won't. Right? Or the next one, or the next one. Eventually we'll get to the point where the stone's not going to be an obstacle. I'm going to get to where we need to go with this stone. Or I'll go and look for a different material. See, I think I had a 25. Yeah, 25 millimeter width on the stem. I still have some room. I can sand in some flakes to thin out that stem to get that to fit within the foreshaft notch. Better. I think that's as far as I'm going to let it go. It's close enough. If I try any more thinning, might not work. I can try some shallow flakes. Let's see. I can try some shallow flakes to thin it down. Let's see. See, just set one in here. Let's see. I think I'm just going to let it go no matter what. Yeah. It's close enough. We'll see. If I get another chance to thin it down once I dress up all the edges, then I'll do it again. I'll do another thinning flake. Now it's time to sharpen the edge. Time to sharpen the edge. And this is where there were certain techniques that were used in the old days that were very regular. And very effective. I have my own style of sharpening the edge of the blade, but I'm in the process of adapting that. I'm in the process of changing the way I sharpen the edges of the blade. I've already begun to do it in a more regular pattern, but I need to actually change the way I contour the surface near the edge. And I'll be describing that as I go, as I understand how to do it. And as I look at more artifacts, study more artifacts, and then scrutinize the information and look for the edge treatments. A lot of it is not described in the literature. You have to look at the actual photographs of the artifacts in order to see what kind of edge they got on there. What kind of edge was put on these artifacts. If you don't have an artifact to go off of. And sometimes there's various techniques. That's the hardest part. Well, actually it could be easy too, because if there's a lot of different techniques and it gives you room to maneuver. And it may be why there's other various techniques, because they wanted room to maneuver back in the day. They didn't want to be locked down to a certain sharpening technique. Although beveling in this area was pretty common, I'm going to do the slight serrations on this one. I think beveling is pretty much a retouch or a secondary type of sharpening, and not the primary type. So stage 1 artifacts had, and I'm just guessing, stage 1 artifacts had the slight serrations as the first stage on this particular type. So that's pretty much it. I don't need to go any thinner. I hope that was in focus. I didn't even notice that was on autofocus that whole time, the past 3 minutes. Hopefully that wasn't too bad. It was a pretty straightforward approach to sharpening. You just take down the thick spots, pick at the thick spots, sending in thinning flakes where necessary to get rid of lumps. There's still lumps on the surface. There's still lumps in different areas, but I don't want to lose this contour. I like the excurvate edges or the convex edges. I think some of these were probably straight too, but I like this kind of look. All right, so there you go. I think that's a Marion. Again, I'll take some time to look it up. It's this one is 20 millimeters wide. This one says 25, so this stem may be a little narrow. Although I don't know exactly where they measure the stem. That's another technicality. See, they could be measuring the stem width as it starts to curve downward. So there's a straight part for the barb, and then as it starts curving downward, that's where the stem starts. So if that's the case, then I've got a pretty good width on the stem, but it's not 25. The depth on it is only 10. This one says 15. So this may be small. 70. Yeah, I don't have a 70 length. I lost a bunch of material around the edges trying to thin it down. So I may be on the small side for the Marion. Hopefully I'm within range on the lower end. I usually write down averages, so hopefully that worked out okay. All right. Nice material. But it's deceiving. The coral, even though sometimes it'll flake really nice, sometimes it'll end up step fracturing on you, and you'll have to lose width in order to do damage repair. or to thin down areas that are troublesome. Some of these, like the coral is not consistent in one area, like right here, it's more crumbly than on other areas. Like the tip was easy to do, but this right here is more crumbly, this area, that kind of thing. Okay, hopefully that was all right. And that's it.